Welcome to the Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share that passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. Welcome as we continue with season 12 with a focus on women's health. It's going to be a great season, so let's get into it. Sarah Brown is a certified nurse midwife and women's health nurse practitioner. She has experience working in pediatrics, labor and delivery, community birth, and gynecology settings. She obtained her doctorate degree from the University of Illinois at Chicago. A primary passion of Sarah's is physiologic birth, which involves moving through labor, birth, and postpartum in a way that prioritizes a woman's natural body processes and capabilities. Through this love, she found her second passion in functional medicine, which she recognized had a profound intersection with her own specialty. Sarah practices at Retreat Care Group, where she integrates her knowledge in traditional Western medicine with the body's innate ability to heal. She combines reproductive and intimate health with her functional medicine training to optimize health outcomes from puberty to menopause and everything in between. I'm so excited to get into this conversation. I am so excited to have Sarah Brown back on the podcast. You may have remembered her from the first episode where she was on a panel talking about women's health. It was such a great conversation, and so I'm so glad to invite her back for her solo episode. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, thank you, Karina, so much for having me both at the panel and back again. It's super fun to connect with you. My name is Sarah Brown. I am a women's health nurse practitioner and a certified nurse midwife. So essentially, I do the full spectrum. People hear midwife, they think birth. So yes, and really everything we kind of say from womb to tomb. So anything in a woman's life from the start of it to the end of it. I started off my career as a nurse in pediatrics and actually worked at the Children's Hospital in downtown Chicago. From there, I sort of moved in, I kind of knew I was going to veer towards women's health, and I moved into the labor and delivery setting in a hospital setting, which I loved and was very much at home in that space. I started to find that I was a little, if you will, if you're familiar with the term crunchy, like a little more hippie of the hospital vibe. So I did find myself after a few years in labor and delivery in the hospital, moving out to community birth setting where I worked at Burr Ridge Birth Center for 3 years. And then I finished my midwifery program at University of Illinois in Chicago. So all of my baby catches were definitely in a hospital setting there. Um, but it was a really awesome opportunity. During the midst of all of that, I ended up finding the opportunity as I was finishing grad school to obtain a nursing job at a functional medicine practice that was closer to my house. At the time, everything I had been doing was like an hour plus from my house. So I was like, oh, this is sweet. This practice is like 20 minutes from me. Great. And I didn't know what functional medicine was. And I was like, I don't know, but I know that they need some nursing skills there. So I'm going to join. And once I started learning what I was learning there, I could not unknow it. So little did I know, once I finished my midwifery program, I ended up veering, and instead of going into labor and delivery birth setting as a midwife, I ended up in functional medicine, which really actually ties in very well midwifery care and the midwifery model of care, as well as sort of like connecting the whole pieces of a person. So that is how I landed in functional medicine, which I can speak more to. But that's essentially me in a quick nutshell.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you chose the path that you did because then it connected us. And
Very
I'm the
true.
type of person that if I connect with you and I am like vibing with like what you're saying, I'm all in. And I
I
think
love
like
that.
that is how we met. Like I heard you speak at an event and I talked to you some more after the event or after you spoke and I was like, "Yes, yes, this is exactly what I'm feeling and this is exactly what I need." And we set up a meeting like the next week and I was like, "Yes, do check, do all of it.
I
Do all
love
of
that.
it." And like we have been working together since, well, for like a handful of months now.
Hmm.
And like my mind is blown at like what we don't know. Like like I'm approaching midlife. I'm at the end of my 30s and find myself questioning all of these different changes that my body has been going through. And I feel like throughout my life, there have been like gaps in my nutrition. And so I remember as a kid, I would take like the Flintstones
Yeah, me
multivitamin.
too.
And then, like, once I was out of like middle school, I just didn't take anything. And
Same.
that's when I transitioned to like my daily frappuccinos because in high school it's cool to drink coffee
Of course.
and or like start your coffee drinking habits.
Yeah.
And then I went to college and I didn't have any nutrition. I
Mm.
remember eating like an ice cream and two cookies for dinner and like
Hmm.
maybe a bagel for lunch because I was just like always on the go, always studying.
Yep.
And then once I had my children, like I was taking uh the prenatal vitamins.
Sure.
And then after I had my children, I stopped.
Hmm.
And then now I'm like, I feel like my body is needing something, but I don't know what because I
Yes.
never really understood what was going on in my body. It was just like, okay, here's a vitamin, take it. Like, this is what
Right.
you need to be doing. And when I didn't have to, I just stopped and didn't do anything. And so yeah, I'd love for you to talk through that journey of like why there is so much miseducation during
Hmm.
our formative years and like now how can we come back to understanding what our body needs?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story because I feel like so many people resonate with that. Um, I also myself like share lots of undertones of that story. Definitely in undergrad nursing, I was sometimes having like Parmesan cheese out of a bag before like going to bed. I'm embarrassed to say now, but we have all been there. Um, and so, I mean, in general, I think for some of the education, and this totally kind of depends on everyone's story, like what your upbringing is like, what your parents are teaching you, what school you're going to, what district you're in, what you're learning there. But I definitely feel like even in my experience of not only my like elementary through high school education, but I mean, I was required to take a nutrition course, I think one or two before like nursing school. Um, in graduate school, I'm not confident that I took any. We did Gray's nutrition in the midst of our like topics, but there was no sort of hone in there, and certainly not a huge talk unless it really had to do with disease processes of like micronutrient status in our body and like where your vitamins need to be and need to live. So that was also, and the guidelines in sort of traditional Western med are the bar set pretty low for, hey, if your vitamin D is like 30, we're good. When in all reality, like in a functional lens, we'd like to see that 60 to 80 to really be impacting your immune system and your bone health. So it's interesting to see the differences of even just benchmarks in kind of our mainstream medicine world. Because then, of course, if our mainstream medicine isn't putting an emphasis on that, it makes sense that we're also not really have an emphasis on that outside of like, okay, yeah, your kids take your Flintstone vitamins. I think, thank goodness that in pregnancy, they're like, yes, take a prenatal. I would argue that that should extend for a year postpartum as well. because your body actually needs more nutrients in postpartum than it does when you're pregnant, which is wild to know. Did you know that?
I did not.
It's basically like you just grew this whole human, and now all these hormone fluxes are changing, and now your body's trying to repair itself and restore and heal. And that process actually takes 1 full year after birth. So I usually have my people, I'm like, I actually need you to nourish yourself more with whole foods and nutrition, and definitely keep your prenatal in. Um, and that's part like a huge miss on our system too. It's definitely not the responsibility, I would say, of each person to be know that. How would you know that otherwise? But the other thing I think makes things really complex and complicated is social media is really can be really great. And it also, like, depending on what your algorithm is throwing at you, you can be like, do I need this? Do I need this? Oh, I definitely need this. Um, and you don't actually know, like, where is Karina's baseline? Like, where are you at? What do you actually need? So sometimes it's kind of like throwing gasoline into a fire, just seeing what works. And um, that's one of the things that we sort of work from framework wise in our practice is really getting, as you know, a very intensive lab panel that really looks at a lot of different micronutrients, inflammation markers in the body, your standard things that you would get in sort of like a regular Western primary annual visit, like your complete blood count, which looks at your blood cells, your chemistries, which looks at some of your electrolytes, kidney function, liver function. But we dive a little deeper. So I can be like, oh my gosh, like this person is super deficient in B12 and vitamin D and magnesium. Like it is no wonder they're struggling with blood pressure or struggling with headaches or these micronutrients are like they're not just for funsies in our body. They're these key nutrients that really are building blocks for um, all of our processes essentially to function in our body. So, um,
That is definitely where I was before we met. I was like, my algorithm was inundated with the all the special drinks that will help like your cortisol levels,
mm,
because like one click and then it's like all of the companies are coming for you. And so there were
uh,
two things that I kept seeing over and over. And I admit that I bought some of these things, if not most of them. Um, but one was like, oh, well, as you age, like your cortisol levels go down, and that's why you start gaining weight and like start seeing body changes in your like lower stomach area. And then the other thing, and it could be related, was about like having stuck poop. And
mm,
like people, or like the ads that I was seeing was for like mushroom coffee or like a different alternative to like coffee, and then like cortisol drinks, and like thing like a little powder that you can add, and like things with like extra fiber. And so I was like, let me try that,
yeah.
because my stomach hurts all the time. I
Hmm.
don't know, like I feel bloated all the time. And so something has to work, because these people in these ads are saying like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
lost like
Change my
10
life.
pounds." Yeah. And so I'm just like at first I was like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah. You're being paid advertising."
Right,
But
right.
then it's like when you see this day in and day out, and you
Mm,
are continuing to feel sick or like bloated. And I had gone to the doctor, I had done like the panel blood work, and everything came back normal, and I'm just like, something is not right. So stop gaslighting me into saying that everything is great.
yep.
And so that's when I met you, and you're like, actually, you can take a deeper dive into your blood work and find exactly what is wrong, or like where your levels are off. That's when I was like, yes, do
Yeah.
it, because something is wrong, something is off, and I want to get to the bottom of it. So what would you say to those ads that are like targeting like my age group of women, and like how do you come at it or like bust that myth or like
Hmm.
explain it better so that it actually makes a difference and we're not just spending money on random.
Random stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that it is a true testament too to how sort of mainstream, and I am not, I do want to be clear because I was definitely trained in mainstream Western medicine, and we need both. 1000% we need both. They're very complementary. I think that is just it though. Like they could be much better in prevention and the building blocks of wellness. And they're really good experts on what to do when you're already at illness. So I feel like um, they're working to be better in prevention. I definitely think, and that's not all practitioners are the same. There are some that are like miles ahead that are doing the preventative work. Um, but I will say that, like you were mentioning, how you would feel at some point when you're like, yeah, I know I'm not feeling right, and I went to the doctor and they said, no, everything's good. Like, or I've heard from my own patients too of, oh, you're just at that age. Like that's another one people get, which I think is wild. Um, and really, to me, in my mind, like I would much prefer a practitioner say, I'm not really sure how to help you at this point, versus like, no, this is just how it is at this age. Because they're not like really pulling up back the hood and looking under the hood and diving in to see like what is off balance here. So I also think, just to justify, like it makes sense to me at some point that the algorithms work then where you're like, well, shoot, what do I have to lose? Like I'm gonna try this because the other place is telling me I'm all good and I know I'm not. So I think that and I don't think necessarily that all products are bad or all like things in the algorithm are bad either. And I think some of them are on point with some of the things they say. But I do think it's a little bit of a guessing game where you're just like, I mean, for you don't know exactly where your levels are at and if you need it. And it only takes them to pull out like some key symptoms that are pretty broad and that people are like, oh my God, yes, I have all those things, for you to buy the product. And there might be some that work real well, which is great. But I would say in general, like for anyone who is feeling like, okay, I just feel like I'm having body changes or something's not right or this is not my baseline. I've been to my annual visits, and or some people have even gone upstream and they've gone to the GI doctor or they've gone to different things and they're still they've gone to a few specialties and they're like, something's not right. Um, I mean, I'd recommend seeking out a functional medicine practitioner, or a naturopathic doctor. Um, there's it's a way most practices are they function a little differently, but it is a great starting point to kind of have a deeper dive. These are practitioners that are really used to looking at those micronutrients and those inflammatory levels. And just like any practice, you kind of see if you vibe with the provider or not, or if it feels right for you, um, kind of as you go through. But it could be a great starting point to get some like really specified assessment on like what are my actual labs doing versus, and kind of tying it together with symptoms. Because I do tell my own patients like it's 50% your labs, but especially when I'm speaking to like perimenopause or like, are we flirting with perimenopause? 50% the labs, but it's 50% what you're telling me, because we're also, the labs are just like a snapshot in time of what we're capturing that day, but it could be different 2 days from now. So it's a little bit of an art, and like hearing your patients and believing them and knowing what they're saying and really kind of going through it from there and sort of working as a team. And I will say, in more like naturopathic, holistic based wellness sort of prevention, um, For some people, there are some aspects of it that happen quickly, but I do like to tell people it's not usually an overnight fix because there's a lot of lifestyle aspects within there that take time to rewire, whether it's like carving out some time to like get a more legitimate sleep schedule and or like getting bowels. Like I like if I like to make sure everyone's pooping every single day, and that can take time too, just to address the gut and the microbiome in the gut. Um, Hormones, especially, are not overnight things. Whether I'm working to help balance hormones naturally, whether we are supplementing hormones, whether it's a combination of both, like that takes time also to build them up and find people's sweet spot. You mentioned cortisol, which I do. I know cortisol and the adrenals are a little bit of like a buzzword right now too, but they're legitimate. I mean, our adrenals are two little endocrine glands that we have that sit on our kidneys. Our kidneys are like on either side of our back, and they kind of look like little party hats to the kidneys. And these are responsible for our energy, also more, I would say more like commonly known for our like fight or flight system, but not always negative. Like it is vital for us to like have this cortisol surge and different things. And I have noticed that I typically call the adrenals our sensitive flowers. They are really impacted by our day to day, whether we're not eating enough, we're on the go, we're not sleeping enough, we're needing to overperform, but we're like totally underfueled for that. And they do take a hit. And I would say, unfortunately, it requires the commitment to all the lifestyle pieces to really help nourish the adrenals versus like, and I do in our practice, we do customized vitamins to each of our patients' labs and what's going on and different things month over month. And even still, though, I will tell people the vitamins themselves are not like a magic pill that's going to fix it all. It's a great complement to the tool, but like, I'm going to need you to experiment with a wind down routine at least twice a week to start so we can get your body like tapping out of survival mode to go to bed. And it's a process. So I feel like it's also being aware of that commitment to not just what product can fix this. And that's the thing in our day and age in society right now. We have such a like instant gratification, like click, pay, got it, work it, here we go. And we don't pause. We're not meant to be living at that speed. That's part of the reason why our adrenals are overloaded in the first place. But also, I would say in understanding that in wellness, it is taking the time to really like slow down, be in your body, check in with what you need in your busy day. And for those listening that are like, yeah, okay, and I've got three kids and this and all these things, and you're telling me it is a practice. So I usually have people like experiment with it in small ways of just like putting intention to these different things. So that's why for my example of like a wind down routine before bed, I will never say to my patients, start doing this every night because that's not going to work. That's not going to be realistic for their schedule. And they're taking one kid here and another kid here, and they're getting home at 10 p.m. some of the nights and eating dinner at 10:30. It's more like I want you to play with like 2 nights a week when you have time to do it, or if you are sitting on the couch and you feel yourself like drifting, get up and go to bed. Don't watch the movie. Just like follow that urge and see what that is like and think about it the next day. So some of it is just like returning people back to like listening to their body, which I think sometimes we get good at tuning out when you're just trying to keep up with our like day to day.
That is so spot on. Like we are constantly on the go. I mean, our attention span as it is these days is so small. And like you said, it is not like an overnight fix. And a lot of us want that overnight fix. And we
Mhm,
want to be able to like take something one day and then be on the other side of it the next day.
mhm,
And I think that is what gets us caught up in those ads that's like, oh, I like was able to feel better within like 2 days and just drink this and you'll be fine. And
You're like, yes, I got time for that.
exactly. Um, but since working with you, I've been learning a lot more of what goes into having like a holistic approach to feeling well. And I love that we started with that full blood panel because I didn't even know that they were like not doing a full blood panel when I went to the doctors.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, well, nothing's wrong. Clearly, you can see everything in my blood. Um, so what do I do now? And they're just like, I don't know, you're all good. And
yeah,
so when you mentioned like, no, we can like go even deeper and get like all these little like tests, I'm just like, why is this not happening like
yeah.
already? And
Hmm.
so can you talk a little bit more about the difference between like going to your regular doctor versus like the blood work that you might do in your office?
Yes, 100%. Actually, that's a perfect segue in because you had mentioned, I will say most primaries or PCPs, primary care providers, um, if they're able to accept insurance, honestly, that is part of the problem of what's dictating them from digging deeper. So insurance only covers X, Y, and Z for your annual visit. And if your provider, even if your provider was like, ooh, I do want to draw these extra things, but I see that their insurance is not going to cover it. And then sometimes too, this is where it gets kind of dicey, because I will say in general, I guess for a zoomed out reference, a lot of functional medicine or naturopathic medicine or anyone doing these deep dives of lab function outside of insurance for that reason, so that really the provider cannot is not dictated by like, oh, unless they're, have rectal bleeding, then you can draw this lab. Otherwise, why are you drawing it? But it's a huge miss because just from my time in functional medicine, I almost always know which micronutrients are going to be low because they're low across the board because our food and the way our agriculture is and all the things, like I kind of know where people are going to be low, but the main systems are like, why are we drawing that? But when we get to fill those things in, people are getting sick less often. People are, they're honestly, their body's ability to fight disease gets better because these little nutrients that are huge for the building blocks of how your body does its everyday tasks we're able to just like, some of them are really easy fixes actually. Um, so I would say, on average, like a primary care provider, they're probably, and I do see this often too, where people are like, well, I have like 15, 30 labs done from my primary. So when I get my eyes on them, I look and really, for example, the complete blood count, it's one lab, but it has like 10, 15 different breakdowns of blood cells in it. So a patient sees that and thinks they got 15 labs done, but really that's just like just looking at the blood. That's all that I'm looking at. It's informative, but it's not looking at vitamins and different things. It's like just to the blood. Another one is a CMP, or a comprehensive metabolic panel, which looks, it's another one that it's just one lab, but it looks at like 12, 15, 14, depending on which one they order, different electrolytes, your kidney function, some liver enzymes. So people might just get those two labs drawn and think, oh yeah, my provider did like 30 things. So some picture is painted, but not really like a full, what is your inflammation profile? What is your micronutrients? Vitamin D used to be one that was also added on, and depending on the provider, and right now I've recently heard that some insurance companies are no longer wanting to provide coverage for an annual draw of vitamin D, which I cannot understand why. Um, so it really depends on the provider. Usually they'll grab a thyroid hormone. So like I won't say it's useless. Like the for sure what they're drawing, I would say is usually anywhere from maybe 5 to 6 labs total, which they are useful. And sometimes people will come to us and say, hey, can I send you these first so you can look at these? And usually they're a scratch of the surface of what's included in ours. So we just kind of dig further. For example, you probably get a thyroid stimulating hormone. One lab just looks at like the number of kind of what your thyroid's doing at a very, very broad standpoint. We are drawing about 5 different labs on the thyroid to see not only that number, but what are the other 2 thyroid hormones that actually get produced from your thyroid doing? Is there any autoimmune issues with the thyroid? Because sometimes, surprisingly, people have totally normal thyroid levels, but the ones that we check that look for autoimmune component are high. So I can flip that early before it affects the actual thyroid levels if I see that they have antibodies on their thyroid that is already kind of going to be working against them. But in the mainstream, unfortunately, it's kind of like not until you're presenting with symptoms are they then able to draw it so insurance will cover it. So we are doing lots of things that sometimes it is overkill to have like a big panel, which is why I usually will tell my patients we'll do the big one once per year. And then we can just, for like when a lot of folks are starting at the practice, we'll check in at 3 months and 6 months just on any of the abnormals to see how we're shifting those along the way. So I do think like more than once per year with the big one is probably a little bit of overkill and you don't necessarily need to, but it's nice to then be able to kind of check in on those other ones along the way. The downfall, especially for accessibility's sake, is the fact that it's outside of insurance. Um, I do think that it is kind of in legislative works and talks to recognize the importance of preventative medicine. I've definitely seen, even like myself, my own insurance company sends me things for glucose monitoring in my like snail mail. So I think even the insurance companies are trying in some form of ways to like be more preventative. But it's tricky because it's comes down to the systems. And as we know, we don't have the best systems here in the US, unfortunately. Um, so this, I would say functional medicine and doing the big panels, which I will say there are lots of labs like LabCorp and Quest that are allowing direct to consumer labs too. So people can buy their labs online without a provider on LabCorp or on Quest. There, I don't think you necessarily get like physician interpretation per se. You might in like one like written up when you get your results. But I think it's nice to know that there's some form of power being put back into the hands of like the people of like I just want to know like I want to know what's going on with my body, or if someone's like, hey, I feel this and this, I'd like to look at these levels. I mean, I've definitely heard there's definitely providers that will be like, I'm not drawing that because I mean their hands are a little bit tied between the system they're working in and the insurance company and what they're willing to cover. And yeah, it's an art and a balance, I think, between the worlds. But ultimately, in this moment, I would say doing the big deep dives is typically cash based, which affects the accessibility of it, really. Because we're all paying for insurance too.
Yeah, I think healthcare in this country is a whole different topic that we can like go down the
100%.
rabbit hole of. Um, but I think that is why I specifically was like, no, this is worth it because I have had questions about my own health for years, and I'd rather just have a peace of mind and someone to walk me through it and
Hmm.
to tell me, like, okay, here's where your numbers are a little off, and here's how we can like get those
Here's our
back up.
plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think um after years of being gaslit into thinking that nothing is wrong with me, um, I was just like, you know what? This is something that I want to invest in for myself. And like you said, I think the more um, we're talking about this and informing people, the more we can get on board with like talking to legislation and like the people that can advocate for us on a bigger level in the future is like that's going to be like how we're going to get things changed.
Changed for sure. I was gonna say what another like that you probably have already noticed, nice difference of these forms of practices. And again, every practice is different, especially kind of like in the private practice sector. It's going to be different for sure. But I get to spend more time with my patients than I would if I was working in a big system where it is sort of based, unfortunately, it's a fine dance of business and, I mean, I guess all things are a fine dance of like business and helping others and all the things, but some of the visit times that I've heard of are anywhere from 8 minutes. Like if you get 20, you're like cream of the crop somewhere. But 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 is like the longer visit. I'm like, this is insane. What are you supposed to cover in that amount of time? And so it makes sense to me that they get to draw two labs and talk about two labs and like they don't have time to talk about anything else. So I love, love, love getting to spend after my initial consult is an hour with someone. Um, Low key, if there's no one behind that person, I might be in there an hour and a half with them. And then my like monthly check-in follow-ups get to be 30 minutes. And it's just, I don't understand how you could do any education or like really meaningful, depthful diving in because sometimes we also like we're going personal. We're going all across the lifestyle because that's really who makes us us. It's not just body and labs. It's like psyche, emotional status, relationships, work, all the things. And we go there depending on the visit and the appointment. And so having time and space to just feel safe enough to open up about those things, I think is important. Um, and again, that's not to say there aren't providers in the traditional systems that are still really good at doing a great job in 15 minutes. But for me, I was like, oh no, I don't know that I can.
Yeah, and when you're in that office, it's like they give you a lot of information, like right off the bat. They're like, okay, this is what I found, this is this and this and this. And then they're like, any questions? And you're just like,
Wait,
um,
what did I just listen to?
yeah. And then you're like, no, I don't think so. And they're like, great, okay, see you next time. If you have questions, ask on the portal. And you're just like, it's like a whirlwind. And
Mhm.
so I did appreciate like the time that we spent together. And even in that initial consult, you're like, do you have time to stay? And I was like, yes, like, of course. Like, are you sure that you have time? And I think that's something that, especially as a Latina, I really appreciated from the first time that we met because there's a lot of um, like gaslighting or just rushing through and not really understanding my lived experiences, my
Mhm.
cultural experiences. And when I was just like, hey, I heard that maybe Latina women go through perimenopause like at an earlier age. You're just like, yes, I believe that, and blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, wait, someone like agrees and I'm not
Aw.
wrong, or I'm not like being put like, okay, yeah, yeah, well,
Crazy for
study.
thinking these things, or yeah,
Yeah,
we're being shut
exactly.
down for something you're saying.
Exactly. And so the more that I um, research or like even just meet with you and talk with you, I feel like, oh, someone like gets me and like does not invalidate my cultural experiences, my cultural
Mhm.
roots, and is actually taking the time to kind of like connect the dots on what I'm feeling, what research shows, and what my cultural experiences have been.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. And it's like once you find someone like that, like you stay with them and you try to tell other people like, okay, this girl like she gets us. And so
Thanks,
yeah.
Karina.
Yeah, yeah. Um all right. So I want everyone to like go follow you and learn more about what you do. So where can people connect with you and like work with you?
That's a great question. So, I don't have a personal social. I've thought about it for many years to like keep one up and have. I made one, a midwife one that I thought would be cool, but I never picked it up because also I am in my own adrenal healing, and I realized that it was easier for me to just like kind of pour my investment of time into my actual visits. But our practice does have an Instagram, which is Retreat Care Group, all one word. Retreat is Retreat, Care Group. Um, and we also have a website that is called tryretreat.com. The website's being remodeled currently, but for anyone who's interested, we have free Hello consultations that you can book on the website. There'll be a calendar that you can pick your time slot, and then you will connect with our patient coordinator who will call you at that time slot. They will ask questions to find out about you, what your health concerns or health goals are. They'll tell you a little more about us and how everything sort of works, and then that person would help you get booked for an initial consult, and the labs too. So some practices, I do want to point out one thing we do is we get the labs first, and then we get those results in, and then we consult with you to review the labs at that consult. Some practices do that in reverse. They consult with you first. So I like to point that out because I think that that is silly, personally. But yes, so we would already have your results, so your hour is spent going over your results and then formulating a plan. And some people choose to work with us. Other people want to just get the information initially. I usually give a very, very detailed after visit summary over all your results and what you can do. And I tell people, hey, if like coming to me is not feasible for you, like I'm gonna send you with hella information in this after visit summary so you have a launching pad of like what to start doing right off the bat.
Yeah, which I thought was awesome. So I'm like, yes, let's get everything like squared away. And I think that also when we're like in such like busy scheduled lives, like that just goes to show like you are like validating that we have like let's make the most of our time together so that you're not
Mhm.
like coming in for no reason and then coming back for like yeah, I just really
For sure.
appreciate that.
It is a lot of information. Even though you get an
Yeah.
hour, it's a lot of information. So I like to tell people, you don't need to memorize it. I'll put it in your summary. It'll be there. You can look at it again.
Yeah. Okay, so before we leave, what advice would you have for someone who is listening and is like, all right, where do I get started? Or what is like one thing that I can start thinking about today to kind of like ground me to be to the point where I can like start focusing on the right things?
Um, am I speaking to a female-oriented audience?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say, and we didn't touch on this, but one area to get started is I tell all of my ladies that I like for them to treat their bodies almost like a car with an empty gas tank each morning. And so I want you to think about you need to fuel that gas tank throughout the day in the form of nutrition, in the form of hydration, in the form of like you're not putting yourself last, so that you actually have fuel to kind of bring you through your day and you're not just running off of adrenaline and coffee. But that's a huge starting point is quite literally, I would say if to start anything is not skipping meals, not skipping breakfast, and starting with nourishing yourself and including protein in those meals is going to be a huge thing that really gives your adrenals, the sensitive flowers I mentioned, a break, which kind of then spills into your hormone health and your sleep and your ability to shift weight or not hold weight. So making sure that you're fueling yourself is a great place to start with. I would say, as a blanket statement, 60 to 100 grams of protein in your day, but sprinkling it throughout the day, and not just saving it for like dinner or, you know. So fueling yourself along the way. I guess also from a more broad standpoint, just starting to listen to your body and remember the flight attendants when you have to put your mask on first before you put on other people's masks. That is very true. And women are very good at filling all the other cups around them and potentially not theirs ever. So much easier said than done, but remember that it's a practice and you just put a little effort into it every day of like, what does my body need right now? And starting to tune into that.
Yeah, and I must say, that was like the first thing you told me, like, okay, let's not drink a cup of coffee first thing, and let's eat something substantial before that cup of coffee. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And honestly, it wasn't as hard as I thought. It was
It's
okay.
not natural for a lot of people. I will say everyone I would say majority of people are having their coffee like, I need my coffee first. So I also understand not feeling hungry in the morning. So I will tell people even if it's like a handful of nuts or a couple apple slices with some peanut butter, then your coffee. I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been an amazing episode. I mean, it was an amazing panel. And now
So much
I
fun.
am so thankful that you were able to come back on and dive a little deeper on the things that we talked about. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for you and your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Karina. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, and we will see each other in our next follow-up appointment. So we'll see each other
Looking
soon.
forward to it. Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sarah has legit been amazing to work with. She's got me feeling better and understanding more about what's going on in my body from a hormonal perspective. So please reach out to her if you're wanting more answers on what's happening inside your body as you age. Okay, amigas, thank you so much for listening. Please rate and review this podcast so we can get more ears listening to these stories and can continue elevating la cultura. You can also comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories I share. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.